introduced, and approximately 1 week before that we had a big discussion, and now we are going to have an update. Almost 2 months have passed since then elapsed, so I give the floor to the MP Yehor Sobolev, who is going to be moderator of the discussion, and we will introduce the speakers for today, and then the audience will actually step in. Now, Patriotic, we have representative of the state border guard service of Ukraine, the head actually. I mentioned Yehor Sobolev, MP, and the head of the Verkhovna Rada Parliamentary Committee on Preventing and Combating Corruption, Sergiy Garmash, coordinator of the Committee of Donbass Patriotic Forces, Sergiy Ivanov, who is a civic activist, writer, and blogger, Yuriy Pasko. I don't have the paper on hand. Also, Kostyantyn Romanov, Yuriy waiting Natalya Veselova to join us later, and Kazanskiy. I think they will join our discussion later on. Now I'll give the floor to Yehor Sobolev, and he's going to open the discussion. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks to everybody who come here. And separately, would like to thank the responsible employees of the law enforcement bodies. Ms. Kostyantyn represents here the SBU, the leadership of the Antiterrorist department of SBU, and also the border guard services here, which are the instrumental bodies in regulating or taking this problem. The second time we meet here, first time we discussed the introduction of new rules and regulations when crossing the front line. Perhaps you remember that unfortunately the previous rules and regulations gave rise to a new wave of corruption, which was not present here before the war. We had a number of different recommendations and advices how we can resolve or combat this corruption. Natalya Veselova just joined us, participated in making some improvements into those regulation rules, and we agreed when the new system is introduced, we'll get together again to evaluate the results of that. I'm going to say a few words. Unfortunately, we continue to gather information about the fact that if we are talking about the system of issuance of passes in the checkpoints, there's still a lot of corruption components or corruption cases. When they ask or they demand money for issuing those passes, they do get the money. And we ourselves became convinced that the system of electronic passes issuance, and we ourselves said that the old system did not ensure the safety and security. Vitaly Vishnevsky, my assistant, who joined the state service, the public service before the war in Donbass, he actually secretly took care of one of the operations which frustrated me, at the same time made me laugh. He sent the application equals junior, whatever, and he got the pass, also in electronic format. This is his pass. Of course, Vitaly has a very good sense of humor, no problem with that, but this also shows and demonstrates that we have a big problem with this system per se. That's why I would like to discuss here the drawbacks or imperfections. I understand there are some advantages, but I would like to ask you kindly to concentrate or focus on these advantages. And then the representatives of the different bodies and agencies would have a chance to voice their opinion and their recommendations how we can resolve this problem. Also, we have a public organization which opened their own telephone line. Do we have a representative of this organization here or not? Well, I would like, we have two public organizations, as far as I understand, who have their own hotlines. So please, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself, take in turns, and present your information, then we can start this discussion. Good afternoon, my name is Sergiy Ivanov. I'm the Chief Coordinator of Donbass SOS organization, and we help to the IDPs and people who live on the uncontrolled territory, uncontrolled by the government of Ukraine. And how we provide assistance through the hotline, 1-900, etc. The essence is information coordination assistance, and the majority of the calls today, starting from January this year, those are the calls related to the violations or infringement of, let's say, of the rules associated with crossing the front line or the line of contact. Number of the calls decreased as compared to what we had 2 months ago, but the problems are still there. The major problems are the sites start to operate, but there are some nuances. First of all, it's we cannot attach any documents or scans of the documents if they are not registered on the non-controlled territory. On controlled territory, you have to prove the reason, show the reason why you are going to cross this line, maybe to visit with your relatives or whatever. Otherwise, you cannot attach those documents. That means you have a problem. Again, if you by accidentally introduce some mistake in the date, or maybe there is an extra comma or different letter in your name or surname. There was a case when the young man didn't have Ukrainian alphabet. They used the English I instead of the Ukrainian E, and the system did not allow this document to pass. So maybe you will have the possibility to make editing, whatever, or to correct your mistake, and you can apply again. But today it's impossible. You have to send the letters to the admins of this site. Also, you should know that if your series starts, in the passport starts with 0, the program will not allow you to register. I don't know whether they resolved this problem today or not, but we had a lot of calls, telephone calls regarding this specific problem, and we addressed SBU with this, approached SBU with this problem. Should be noted that this website started to work in more regular fashion, and technical pauses, time consumed for technical intervals is much less than before. You can actually fill out your application during the weekends. And you shouldn't forget there are people who would like to make money on this. There is information in the social site that I can issue the pass for 100 hryvnia. We understand it's impossible to do something, but while the law enforcement agencies keep silence, this actually stimulate those people to be more active. I mean, those who offer this for money. And actually, I sent my application, and before I received the answer, I had to wait 15 or 16 days for the answer, though I'm talking, and actually 10 working days, and I emphasize working days expired, they didn't receive any reply. If your date of your passport expired, you cannot register your document because this is associated with the processing of the data, because, this is a draw, because they mentioned that you can use your pensioner certificate or a driving license. So we're talking about providing more rights and possibilities. The same of coordination group. In Donetsk, you would like to lodge an application for the pass. They will ask you to provide an additional electronic form to fill out another form which doesn't differ from the electronic one. And you shouldn't forget about the persons without citizenship or the foreign citizens. At this point of time, they do not have a chance to send an application using the electronic database or comments and launch an application. And there are a lot of questions which do not have the ready answers today. Thank you.
Now your information, please. Please introduce yourself. I am the head of the organization Lugansk Advocacy Group. The citizens come to us, but on other legal issues we are defending the human rights in European Court on Human Rights. We are informed about how they get to the controlled by Ukraine territory. People who have money, they say, we don't contact this system of passing, we just go by the territory of Russian Federation. This is comfortable, we are sure that we'll get there. There will be no problems. This costs 750 hryvnias to get from Lugansk to Kiev. It takes about 24 hours. Why should we spend money of the state budget for functioning of this system? If people who want to go, they can do it via Russian Federation. And believe me, LNR and DNR have enough money to go via the territory of Russian Federation. Then the question is, how does this system stop the dangers for Ukraine people? This is my question. I have the impression, this is my personal impression, that this way Ukraine is, in inverted commas, protecting itself from people who don't have enough money. They can come to Ukraine, they can demand some social payments and so on. Thank you. I believe it will be correct now if the representatives of the state bodies which are implementing this policy will react to that and will tell what they see as problems and what are the further steps on regulating these problems. Please, could you start? Esteemed MPs, esteemed colleagues, all those present, thank you for inviting to participate in this round table. I would like to inform that there were many complaints about the procedure that existed till the 11th of July 2015, because it clearly stated what documents were to be submitted to get a pass. There were many documents there, the 0 copies of all the documents, including people who were checking the documents, and those who were authorized to do so, they could see who is that is and make a decision. There were many complaints. It was long in time to simplify it, and there were proposals made by different NGOs. The Special Public Council was set up that discussed this issue together with the Security Service of Ukraine. It included the representatives of all the civil society organizations, the members of parliament, and they submitted some proposals which were included into the new provisional procedure. The majority, well, I will show the documents, the majority were reflected in this new procedure. And this procedure, for us as executors, this procedure describes the clear algorithm of how we have to receive the documents, process the documents, and issue, not the pass. There's no such word as pass now. We give the permit to cross the line of contact. I will show you the screenshot for Mr. Jack Nicholson Jr. We received it, yes, we received the application on the website of our center on the 1st of, sorry, that's his, we received it Do you remember when we received it? We received it. It's registered in the electronic system.
У зв'язку з цим
The operator that's processing this application looks at whether all the fields are correctly filled in. There's the last name, first name, the date of birth, there's the number of the passport of the citizens of Ukraine, the date of issuing the passport formally. Everything was correct. The operator, seeing that this questionnaire is filled in correctly, does what is to be done by the security service. This person is, they correct whether this person is related to the terrorist organizations, to any criminal activities, whether the person is connected to any crime. After that, automatically, this application receives the permit. The operator does not see who applies. He sees the electronic address, but that's not the main permit on the basis of which the person crosses the contact line. This information, the same day, by the end of the day, is transmitted to the State Border Service, and the State Border Service puts this application to the guard system of control of crossing the border, and the person who has the intention to cross the line of contact has to come to the passing point and submit the document which will certify that this is the person who is corresponding to the application. So when the person at the cross point checks whether the person, the passport of the person corresponds to the information mentioned in the application, and then allows the person to cross the line or not. As to Donbass source. Yes, our site, when we launched it on the 12th of July of 2015, officially it started working, and we immediately received many applications. We allocated, designated some people, operators who are processing the information. We have the database, but we did not expect that there will be so many people. And we started having some problems. I believe that we coped with all these problems. The website technically was not working, not just because our technical problems. This is not a secret that when the site started working, every day we had up to 25,000 DOS attacks. We had serious technical problems, and our specialist, I believe, managed to cope with that, and we have stabilized the work. We are lagging behind from what was planned. As to submitting applications by people who cannot submit, the developer of a site introduces corrections into website and will be able to correct mistakes in lettering. Very often people call us and we correct the mistakes in online mode. Again, back to this issue. Even today, 5 people came to us who were at the cross points, and they received the permits, but they could not pass the border control because one figure of the passport that the person presented did not correspond to the application, or maybe the letter was wrong in the surname, and we address that problem via the telephone, and I believe that we are coping with that. As to paper applications, we have boxes to receive such applications in paper format. There's no difference how it will be written or filled in. The operator that receives this questionnaire has to manually download into the computer. Those people who are on the other side, well, we cannot give any advice. We cannot help those people who are on temporarily not the territory which is not under our control. We know that there is a business. 250, 400 hryvnias they charge to fill in the questionnaire. How can you pay money to speed up issuing the permit? Here I do not understand. We have 10 operators 24 hours a day, and they have 10 monitors. Who can you give money? They're just working there. That's not realistic. What else did I miss? And the open border, yes, there is a problem, but it's not about permits. The general will talk about that in more detail. We are interacting, but we can say that that's the easiest way, which unfortunately is regulated by the state. The person that crosses the state border of Ukraine on the non-controlled territory section, and then who is entering the territory of Ukraine, is considered to be the person that violates the law. I will explain the mechanism, how it happens. Not to pay any fines, not to be responsible person, legally leaves the territory of Ukraine, goes to the territory of Russian Federation, stays some time at the non-controlled territory, then goes back. And then, as the citizen of Ukraine, can go back home. I will finish with the first one. The general will tell you how many thousands of the protocols on violation of the crossing of the state border are now in the courts. I believe 19 are considered by courts, and several thousands are there. The others, the courts do not consider. We cannot control people who legally cross the border with Russian Federation, and then we do not know where they go. Then they come back. We are trying to control that, but the person legally crosses the border. The law allows it.
Okay, in this case, we are going to come back to those questions which we do not provide the answers to. I believe that the final portion of our discussion here, we are going to discuss proposals, what to do next to resolve the problems. Now I would like to ask either the head of the Border Guard Service of Ukraine to take the microphone. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm the first deputy chairman of the State Border Service of Ukraine, Denis Sergiy. I'm going to talk about those issues which pertain to the competence of this service. We are talking about the electronic permits or permissions. My colleague, I believe, rather clearly reported that issue. This is the second time we are meeting here. I believe that you are well aware how to lodge the applications and how the electronic permission is issued. The Border Guard State Service of Ukraine, within its jurisdiction, takes care of the issuing the passes through the contact line, which is takes place in two areas. In zero area, where our border guards, together with our armed forces or ourselves, we do this, take care of this task. When we verify and check the documents, identify the personality of the persons, or the availability of electronic permission. Then a person is issued a certain document and moves to the checkpoint. Today, two entrance and exit points function in Zaitsev, which we started to operate 100% and so far bogus. And on 28th, we are going to provide another entry and exit point, Troitsky and the Donetsk segment. No. Bogus today. And we are going to move it closer to the contact line. And we are going to have another point in Novotroitsky. Well, non really 100% stable operation is Gnuta, is Mariupol segment or sector. The most unstable today, and practically the checkpoint for entry and exit is the line of contact. Well, literally 1.5 kilometers to the contact line, which is most unstable and dangerous. And more often than not, we stop the movement there. So any person who has all the grounds to cross this line comes to this checkpoint, and where the border guard actually verifies. And as my colleague said, even if Jack Nicholson would come to us, we are going to check his documents, his permission, his pass against his passport or ID and against our database. If everything's okay, this specific person can cross this line and go to the temporarily from the controlled government-controlled territory to the uncontrolled territory and vice versa. What problems do we have which were raised by a person from Donbass? We actually we talked with you several times already. To say today that the system is ideal or that it works uninterruptedly, no, perhaps we cannot do that. It's too early to say that. We have some problems. First of all, we have a huge flow of citizens and vehicles which would like to cross this line, either exit or entry, Ukrainian-controlled territory. Actually, the average daily number is 10,000 citizens. It's too much for two checkpoints. In a civilized European border, even such great big checkpoints as the Gadin-Dragus, we have less people coming through those points per day than in those two checkpoints. And accordingly, we have quite big lines of people and vehicles. I twice visited those checkpoints, and I can tell you that I could see multi-kilometer long lines. And of course, this can jeopardize security or safety because the shooting or shelling take place rather often in those areas. We are talking about the explosives, mines, whatever else, which are scattered all over there. And the fact that the climatic conditions, it was absolutely extreme heat because of the sunny weather. So let's say we are talking about throughput capacity, the number of people can move through those checkpoints was quite low, which was a problem. Today, according to the measures taken by the local authorities and the civil, military, and civil administrations, we can report to you, to our public, about our first achievements. Thereof, the checkpoint Zaitsev, several days ago it started to operate. I can demonstrate to you there were several lanes. We had only 2 lanes, one per exit and entry. Now we have 14 lanes, 6 for exit and entry, 6 each, I mean, and 2 more for the humanitarian aid. Several jobs were 6, 3 to and fro. Now the number of working stations, 14. Again, 7 for exit, 7 for entry. And so the throughput capacity was 3.5, 3. Now it's 4.5, 5,000 persons. And we are talking about from 6 to 20 or 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Can we say that the result of the problems associated with the long lines? No, we still have big or long lines. We need to do something similar at the rest of the checkpoints, especially we are talking about the Lugansk area checkpoints. The checkpoint Bugas, I call it this name used because it's more familiar to you. This will start operate with this based on the same principle, but their throughput capacity would be bigger. Again, this will increase the throughput capacity, which means that the lines will be shorter in the time spent in the lines. In order to automate the process, to make them automatic, also speaking whatever we sent or delivered there in order to speed up the procedure of checking or verification, and the cost of the international technical assistance. We send there new scanners. The database of the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine have more than 6,000 electronic permissions, and we are still working with our colleagues. About 400,000 are being processed now. We met with you 2 months ago, right, Yehor? Yes. So it's understood that the issue of, this was a really painful issue of electronic, filling out electronic forms, but it's not that big problem, not that acute problem. It's still a problem, but anyway, more people address us. We have to very promptly resolve the problem at this side. What I mean to say, people live in the temporarily occupied territories without any permissions, with the children and so on and so forth. And there are a lot of rumors associated with that. But we do not have the right to limit the rights of any citizen of Ukraine or without a person without citizenship. We cannot refuse them the right to enter territory of Ukraine. In this case, we let them go. Are there some reservations? Yes, there are. In some cases, we passed a decision not to allow the entrance of those people to Ukraine. Exit from the territory controlled by the government of Ukraine to the temporarily occupied territory, there are more problems, especially if those people are accompanied by children. This is a very painful problem. Especially we are talking about the notarized document, which was, prepared in the other territory. Deemed invalid because it should be done territory controlled by the government of Ukraine. Again, we are talking about security and safety protection or people and their children. We understand that this process still requires some further working on, because the measures we take demonstrate that the abuse or the threat to the national security situation is available is such that they didn't have any chance to take care of their filling out the forms or taking documents. We face those problems today.
I promised then we are trying to involve public to our work, and we decided to create the public control points. We're ready to do that. I invite you, please come and jointly with us control all these processes. We have done a lot of work on demilitarization of the control points. We did the awareness, we organized awareness campaigns for local people, and we have enrolled some local young men and girls who will be working for us. And this will allow us to reduce the threats and to react to the requests we receive from our citizens. So Gnutov is in our plans. That's the control point, and we have discussed it with the governor, and we are planning to develop this control point. We have more complicated situation in Lugansk region, where there's not a single control point of entry and exit. We are working in Lysychansk direction, but everything is connected to security. We do have hope that at least one control point in Lugansk region will be built. Now, as to our citizens living via practically 4 kilometers of state border within Donetsk and Lugansk regions, these are the territories which are not under our control. We do have these problems, and I can officially tell you we have two main points of crossing where we register such facts. They go via the cross points which are closed, and they enter via Milove and Hoptovka. In Milovoye, there are more than 15,000 protocols about administrative violations. Also, they organize some controlling measures, and that's the issue of getting social payments, pension, and also the registration with the elements of fraud, and there are many other issues. We, together with the Security Service, with the Ministry of the Interior, and we are also inviting the representatives of social services to work with this category of people. But these are people who came and left, about 15,000 of them. There is a special category with whom we have no realistic mechanisms of how to work with them. These are our citizens who say, we are refugees, we were running away from military actions, and now we are coming back home. In this case, we have no mechanism. Any citizen will return. One thing we are doing, we examine and we check all the database that we have. We work with them. But there are many which cause doubts. We understand your concern. We work jointly. I cannot say that there's some efficient mechanism of counteraction. Milove. There are about 15,000 protocols. In Goptovka, approximately the same figure. There is official statistical information, it's open. Please talk to the microphone. How many people are registered who use the scheme that I mentioned, who first legally left the territory of Ukraine, then they went to the occupied territory and then again came back to Ukraine via Russian Federation? Is that registered anywhere? Yes, that's registered, and we, all those who left via temporary not controlled section, when they enter Ukraine they are all registered, and we make this protocol. But I give you the example when there's no violation. Do you register that? I will finish. We are just making the protocol, but the decision, but then the court has to decide. But what is this protocol about? If a person comes back from Russia, we understand your question and we understand that there's no answer to that. We address the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with the question, what is done to reduce the movements via Russian-Ukrainian border? The Russian citizens now cannot come to Ukraine having their domestic passport, and only Russians who are citizens of border regions, pre-border regions, have the right to stay there without registration for more than 90 days. But that is one of our tasks, and the citizens can join it. But nevertheless, well, we believe that the decision should be made on how to limit the entry for Russians and how to limit crossing of Russian-Ukrainian border. And because we have the system when the border with Russia is open compared to the border with occupied territories or compared to the border with other countries, and that is our task, the task of politicians, of journalists, to to force passing this decision. The border service cannot take all the responsibility. Thank you for very grounded, substantiated report. I would like to ask the representative of the Council of Security to answer two questions. Everything that was mentioned says that we need to address two problems. We have discussed the first problem, that's openness of the borders with Russia, and the second problem is the one that has been mentioned by public organizations. Why not cancel these passes, and why not switch to introducing the guard system with the participation of all the law enforcement bodies, to add the information about citizens who are suspected in violations, in any risks for state defense. Because the story with Nicholson tells us about that. The person has to come to the passing point, present the passport, and automatically we can see whether there are any problems for the defense. If the information in automatic mode is transferred from other law enforcement services to this system, this will be the best this will mean comfort for citizens when crossing the border. please answer these two questions. Thank you. Let's start from the last question. Why we introduced the electronic system? Why cannot we check at the border? I was working in the security service. All the agencies submit this information, and the security service has access to this information. The information is supplied on a permanent basis, but we mean that this information should be transferred not to the security service but to the border guards, because they have this electronic system which is on all the borders, and it would be logical to focus all the data about risks so that the passport is the place of checking all these risks. The idea was to do this inspection before the person arrives to the passing point. In online mode, our internet and ATO zone does not allow us to do it quickly. All the providers remove their servers from ATO zone, and it works very badly there. One thing is to transfer the list of persons who are allowed to cross this checkpoint. And another thing is to create channels of access to database which are here in Kiev, so that this is done at the border. This is very complicated procedure technically, and this way we will increase the lines. But our objective was to reduce the lines, and the idea was to do it at a cross, at the checkpoint. But basically, remember this last election campaign. There were 15 Darth Vaders. In Zaporizhia, there was a woman, Osama bin Laden, and she received the passport. Our NGO also participated in that public council. During the meetings, they were saying that additional money is allocated to organize internet and all other technical things at the pass points. You said that there's no technical possibility. I believe that does not correspond to the information that we heard during our meetings. And I cannot understand why you cannot check it all, having the number of the passport without spending the money from the state budget. Why this cannot be done? Is that a political instruction? Why is that done? Why so much money is spent? Why are they doing it to the citizens of Ukraine? The problem is clear. If we repeat it many times, we will not find the solution. We discussed it with the secretary of the NSC.
We understand the separation of the databases and the problem of coordination, but this is done in the interest of the state, not only for the safety or security or comfort of the citizens, but in the interests of the defense, to resolve this problem as soon as possible, because between the check or the verification, as you said, this is kind of the preliminary verification, and the checkpoint, some time could pass when those citizens can do something, and it's not, we cannot be sure 100% that you can actually call back this permission. With all respect to technical problems, we ask you to focus on the resolving those problems. If you need some additional funding or some other actions, I believe everybody in the parliament will support and the whole country will support the better defense capability of ours, defense. And now we're speaking about the other question, speaking about the Russians. We are talking about the Russians. This within the jurisdiction and competence of the MFA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and which is regulated by a number of the interstate agreements and treaties, the majority of which hasn't been cancelled or devoured yet. So we cannot, well, there is a problem, it exists, but I believe that the respected lady from Gdansk organization, she outlined specifically the problem. The person crosses the Russian-Ukraine border or frontier, goes through the Russian territory to the uncontrolled territory, and then comes back again legally. But how we can actually follow or the monitor or control the movement of Ukrainian citizens to the Russian Federation territory, can we ask the Russians to give us that information? You understand what I'm talking? Not only the Russians occupied our territories and damage and ruin our cities and kill our citizens. They are involved in the hybrid war, as you said. They have the whole networks of Dosadak and boats, which actually provide a lot of barriers and hindrances to operation of our systems. This is a big problem, and we try to exert a lot of efforts, as my colleague from SBU told us, in order to do something, but under the conditions of the hybrid war and the ITO operations, it's difficult to do that. This system, for crossing the front line was created in a record-breaking short period of time, That was very difficult to do. And the last problem, incompatibility, or when the data, different data do not coincide. Well, this is not a new problem. Perhaps you said that they will be not satisfied that if all the data will be checked at the checkpoint, for sure we're going to make those lines of the people waiting line longer. In fact, we are talking about the same system, much more convenient for the citizens, applicants, to wait, sitting somewhere far away from the front line to wait for the decision to be made. We heard what you said. We do value and appreciate the efforts of the state bodies to resolve those problems, but at the same time we would like to draw attention to some of the issues which do not, which cannot endure, which have to be criticized. On the one hand, we have a big danger of many people coming to this territory who can be involved in some sabotage or subversive actions. On the other hand, we are talking about peaceful people who live on the bordering or neighboring regions in the territory of Russia, next to our borders, and we have to think about those as well. We still have 30 minutes. We heard what has been done, what problems are outstanding. Let's focus now on the proposals. What decision should be taken in your opinion, and then we can make those the document as a special address to some of the government activities, the Kazanskiy and then you. Well, in fact, what has been said, I didn't understand one simple thing: how the existing system can prevent those terrorists or some kind of criminals to get in the territory of Ukraine. I didn't hear the answer.
Also, I understand that it creates problems for everyone and does not address any problems. Why cannot you create one database? We're talking about incompatibility of database. Why cannot we create one database with people who are realistically involved into some crimes against the Russian state? They maybe work in police of DNA, they somehow are were involved in organizing the referendum. There are many of such people. We maybe even know most of them, because very often it's open information. All those who work in executive committees of occupied cities, these are people who cooperate with the occupational administration. They could be included into the blacklist. They could be prohibited the entry. Why should we introduce permits for everyone? We understand that they can avoid it. This does not stop anything else. So there are some places, well, you do not even have to go to the territory of Russia. I can show you how from Dzerzhinsk you can get to Gorlovka. You can basically hit the a bomb. That's your own risk, but that's not just some people who are traveling. There are big trucks with products that are traveling. No one's mentioning that. We're talking about permits, but let's talk about some facts. When the person is either the work of occupational administration, and just like Jack Nicholson, the person gets the permit and gets to the territory of Ukraine. We know that the children of all these guys who are in Lugansk, they study here. There is Leonard Svideskov. Where does his son study, or his daughter? Miroshnik, Yurov. Someone published. There are many stories like that. There was a story about how some minister of Elena received pension, 60,000 hryvnias, and she came to receive it to Ukraine. Why this information is open? These people are involved into the crimes against Ukraine, why passes are issued, and why this is done this way. I see no sense in this system of passes. There should be some blacklist made so that some specific people are prohibited to enter the territory of Ukraine. I will add, and here's one more problem. The blacklist is impossible, because what we are talking about, I analyzed it. I analyzed the situation with the law enforcement people, those people who work in repression structures of so-called LNR and DNR. I can tell you, we are not looking for anyone. The Ministry of Interior, on the website, we are not searching for everyone. I believe that we have to start from, first of all, we need to do it so that the head of SBU should know who is Jack Nicholson, so that they do not declare him missing or wanted. But all that is just the element of the global sabotage, of the fight. They are not terrorists, they are enemies, they are collaborationists, but they are not wanted. And how shall we create the blacklist? How will you do it? Will it be based on what? There's no mechanism here. The blacklist should be include only those people to whom we declare suspicion, but not one of the deputies of the so-called Prosecutor General of LNR is wanted, not the head of the chief processing department. There's a website of the Ministry of Interior of LNR and DNR. These people are on YouTube and they say this and that they're not wanted. I understand that who will be put to prison for that. So in this case I believe that the situation is very bad. The situation with Nicholson is the top of grotesque. And I believe Yehor, I don't know when, you probably continue your work in the committees. I believe that you need to invite the head of the Security Service and the Prosecutor General. To have more arguments, you need to do that, and the Minister of the Interior, and then we can talk about certain things. Till we observe the procedure, we cannot talk about any blacklist or anything. Otherwise, this all will be the violation of the law. I understand that we all say, let's stop it, let's close it, and myself, very often I'm too radical, but let's not turn Russian, and let's persecute the criminals for what they committed. Your colleague behind you, then you, and then Natalya Veselova and you. Good afternoon. I am from European Business Association. I could not hear about how people receive permits to cross the border for cargoes, if the companies that work in ATO zone need to receive the permit. Now I have about those who addressed me, there are about 10 companies who are waiting, who have been waiting for more than a month for the permit. They don't get any answer. There's some information on the website about who received the permit, and there's no information about them. Maybe they were refused. I have no answer. I talked to the Security Service. Security Service refers me to State Fiscal Service. State Fiscal Service refers me to Security Service. No one says, come to Security Service. They say, go to Security Service, go to Fiscal Service, and that happens every day. Yuriy, could you tell me who's responsible for that? I will answer that question. Giving permit for movement of cargoes is issued by coordination group or coordination center, but in accordance to this provisional, temporary provision, the physical person that has the intention to move the cargo has to submit some documents. The inspection of the documents is done by the State Fiscal Service, and based on their opinion, the coordination center or coordination group passes the decision on including the physical person to the list of those who receive the right to move their cargoes. We've done that, but we go to coordination center. There are too many phone numbers, only 50% of them answer. Yesterday in the Security Service they gave me the phone number, which has to give me answer, but it's beyond the zone, out of reach. And you then call some different coordination center group, and they say that's not within our competence. But this is not ethical. If you have no answer, don't just throw the phone. hang up. Just give me the list and phone numbers. I'm sorry for that. There is this problem. I would request your assistance. If there are such facts, then send the letters to the head of Antiterrorist Center. It's within his competence, his powers, to organize everything that's happening in the ATO zone. In fact, it's happening in the ATO zone based on the resolution. All the responsibility for actions in the ATO zone lies on one person, and no one can interfere with his activities. So address the head of the Antiterrorist Center.
I would like to draw attention within the boundaries of the proposition. This must be resolved, this problem, systematically. From the legal point of view, how can we talk about the efficiency of this permissive system if there is no responsibility of those persons who officially take the official positions in LPR and DPR? There is no search, generally speaking, or operations. How they can decide whether to give permission or not to give permission to a person to cross the border line? We have to create a new database, or let's say they open some criminal proceedings, and the people must be taken to the responsibility. If we do not do that, then you subverts the offense of the country. We have such a proposal, and even the demand. Together, we have here Alexander, who addressed the same issue repeatedly. Behind the public council, we raised that issue because behind the backs of the public, you adopted this temporary procedure or provisions that the passenger scheduled bus cannot go through that line. And what happens? Long waiting lines. People are just sleeping and living there. And by the way, what kind of the security issues they are talking about? If there is a big line in the direction terrorists, and the shelling is there, and they're shelling, and a lot of damage done, but they cannot use this scheduled passenger transport. What's that? Actually, we were involved in the some action of protests, and we addressed our letters to SBU and the ATO center, because there is no logic in that, and from the point of view of the national security, or the safety or security of the ordinary people, generally speaking. I would like you to respond to this problem of the scheduled bus. Yeah, this is a serious problem, and everybody said that at all the level. But after this went under Volnovakha, Bugas, when the scheduled passenger bus was just shot, and there were a lot of other cases when the passenger cars were shot at, or shelled. Microphone. They do not speak into the mic. I represent the public organization, the independent investigation. We work together with Natalya. I honestly tell you, we try to cross the front line. 2, 3, or 4 kilometers is the line just of the vehicles. Whether this is the issue to the border guards or the security service, or to the National Council. No. If you're talking about, there are some wire traps and the shelling, that's true. But is there a chance that the people were less hurt if there will be the buses coming or going, or if everybody individually will cross this front line, and they cannot walk? They have to ask the passenger cars owners for them to allow them to join or whatever, and then the security service is going to verify. By the way, I agree with you that the people get or obtain those passes, but then when they have to enter the checkpoints, there was several cases when they were not allowed to cross with the children or some aged persons, but your database does not show that. I agree with that, and this problem exists because the electronic system is not perfect, and the amount of money allocated by the state, it's not, maybe not enough. It doesn't. It's not efficiently used. Well, there is the representative of the Minister of Interior says, what the procedure, either the search or criminal proceeding or something different, but they do cross this line. Speaking about the Dzerzhinsk, Golubka, I was born in Dzerzhinsk. I can find you at least 10 different ways how people cross that line bypassing this procedure. Can that be done by their enemies? Yes, they can. What about the explosions and all the wire traps or whatever else? We are talking a long time, but we do not make progress on those lines. So we have to document all the cases and bring this to the notion of the top officials in this country. How many people die? What we hear from the media, there's just a few of them, but their number is much bigger. We have to bring this to the attention of the ATO Coordination Center, the SBU, and you as the all other law enforcement. And Natalya, the lawyer, told you. And what about the legal procedure? What is that? Tell me. If the minister, of some kind of LPR can come to Kiev and get and receive the pension, this is humiliation, or whatever, you name it. But ordinary people are waiting this waiting line for weeks sometimes, not days. And if a person intends to commit a crime on the territory controlled by the government of Ukraine, what would be the result of that? What to do? Everybody who is gathered here, we are united by the desire to resolve this problem. So it's no sense to tell each other how bad it is. There is sense to come to some joint decisions and pull in our efforts to make sure that those decisions are implemented. Based on the results of our first meetings, we sent our addresses to the top officials. Some of those decisions were approved, some not. We do not have any other way as to fight for their adoption, some decisions, and Natalya, and then we have 3 persons to speak.
Let's stick to the timing, speak to the microphone and ask questions very briefly. The problem of buses, I mentioned it last time at the previous meeting, and we were convinced that the buses are a dangerous thing, but the problem hasn't been addressed. People stay overnight in the field, the toilets, there are some cabins which is impossible to use. People go to the bushes, and very often people die in the woods, in the fields. This is the problem, which probably is not as noticeable as the bus which was shelled at in Volnovakha, but we need to somehow resolve that problem with moving between cross points. In Donetsk, people hire a private driver, 3-4 persons take the car, they pay 500 grivnas. It costs 2,000 grivnas to go to Mariupol. The person paid 700 grivnas to Sheriff Tur. They could get to Kiev and bring the luggage. The person has the choice to get to the cross point, then to walk between 2 checkpoints 20 kilometers, or to hire a private driver. They were saying that the small transportation will be allowed to move but still we have the private drivers, the speed of service. At some checkpoints they provide services quickly, on others, well, probably it depends on the personnel that works there. Very often people stay in the hot weather. There were cases when people started attacking the checkpoint because it was too hot, and the people could not be stopped. 2,000 people were walking. There are problems. And what Sergei mentioned, a brief remark. We all have access to internet, and I was interested, as the citizen of Donetsk, what is done to make responsible the first, the heads of Donetsk and Donetsk region who started the separatist movement. The mayor of the city, Lukyanchenko, on the website of Lukyanchenko, there were calls for people to get united, and there were articles that 5,000 representatives of the right sector are arriving, defend, and there were calls to create the subplot, and I sent the request to the members of parliament on 4 persons: the mayor of the city Lukyanchenko, the secretary Bogachev, the head of city police Romanov, and the governor Shishatsky. SBU security service replied that that's not within their competence. Ministry of the Interior thanked me for the information, but the General Prosecutor's Office started the criminal proceedings. If I did not send the request of the MP, no one would react. Lukyanchenko is renting the apartment in the yard of the General Prosecutor's Office. Lukyanchenko went to Russia because someone saw him in the center of Kiev. The citizens have to take some measures. Let's get united. Let's give us information, and we as MPs will be giving information to law enforcement bodies. Let them react once they cannot find this information in open sources. So these are the problems.
I'm sorry. Sergei was absolutely right that they do not open the criminal proceedings against such persons. This was done in accordance with a law dated September 16th last year, which was adopted about the special status, Article 3 about the exemption from criminal responsibility of any persons, etc., etc. In other words, today they are adopting a new wording of the Constitution, which contains this provision with a reference to that law dated September last year, and this depends exclusively on the deputies whether they will adopt this law or not. That's number one. Number two, as for crossing the line and contact line, now we have the following information. I'm going to speak Russian, okay? And now we have a certain well-developed business related. They take with themselves children and the old people, and they move the people for some money. This is the case of all the checkpoints, maybe with the exception of Gnutovo. This is very true. This is real truth. We were working with the state border guards with specific persons. I can say that depends exclusively on the commander of this unit, which specifically deals with the permission to pass or not to pass. So the question about the commanders is very serious. Unfortunately, we did not have the response from the respective service. And I told you about that when we had the meeting with you. That's it. Thank you. The last proposal or the speech I would like to raise the following issue. We're talking about the cargo or the freight vehicles and moving the personal belongings. We were talking that there is no limitation to move those things, and the limitations, restrictions for the trucks. There are no limitation restrictions, but you cannot take your belongings, or the trucks cannot move. And many enterprises who would like to let's say, to move their equipment to a different territory, they can do that. We address different services, including the fiscal service. Everybody said that that was not their competence or jurisdiction. We understand that today, for example, to buy here the refrigerator or the washing machine costs a lot, but everybody could bring their own here and allow them to save money, but we limit their possibility to do that or live comfortably here. Thanks a lot to everybody for your participation in our round table. I agree that we deal with the huge sabotage of the defense and the law enforcement activities, but doesn't mean that we should raise our hands up. We are going to finish our round table. I propose the following. We'll prepare our address to the top officials of our country with the emphasis on three things. Number one, investment into and creation of the single system of information regarding the people who can present any danger. Are we talking about a separate new database for all the law enforcement, or maybe a special card to use the data in the guard database? This will be decided or resolved by the experts, but something has to be done. Until we do anything, we are going to encounter the problems with our citizens and the easy life of the separatists who go laborers, Sergiy named them. As the people's deputies, as MPs, we are going to demand a more serious control on the Russian-Ukrainian frontier. And this is not easy thing for me to say because my parents live in the territory of Russian Federation, but we became the subject of aggression. We have to have a human approach to resolve the third problem. The passenger buses scheduled movement of them is absolutely needed because those multi-kilometer long waiting lines are not admissible. I suggest that Semyon Semchenko, one of our MPs, he always supports such position. We are going to work along those lines further on. We have a big request to the NGOs and the public organizations to continue your most required work, and at the same time, please address us as well. If you have some addresses, inform us. We are going to disseminate that information on the one hand. On the other hand, we are going to introduce the deputies' control over the consideration of those issues. Unfortunately, Sergiy Ivanov does not represent the Minister of the Interior, but he has a birthday today. So I would like to say happy birthday to you and thank you for the fact that you spend this birthday with us. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. If this is very important, okay, we worked for a long time. In the previous wording, they had the possibility to appeal against this the decision in the court. We could do that if the people is on the uncontrolled territory. Could they involve some public organizations which could support this application or appeal on the controlled territory? But somehow this issue somehow disappeared from the agenda. So those people cannot appeal against the decision taken anywhere.
Dear colleagues, we understand what you mean. I'm sorry. And we understand what you mean. You have the right for this idea. Also, we understand the position of the security service. Myself, as a member of parliament, I can say the state of Ukraine cannot guarantee and should not guarantee any rights to its citizens on the occupied territories. And there's a big sense in recognizing these territories as occupied. And we'll insist on that. If people want their land to be Ukrainian, to have Ukrainian law there, they have either go to the free part of Ukraine and help to liberate it, but being on the occupied territories and demand the rights of Ukrainian citizens is impossible and not realistic. I agree that the relations with Russian Federation official are to be reviewed, and we have agreed to get involved into that because that's nonsense. Our attitude to occupied territories is more rigid than our attitude to the aggressor who occupied these territories, and we will be working on that. Thank you all.